Netroots Nation, please welcome Louisiana State Representative Matthew Willard.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Willard. I'm a state representative here in the city of New Orleans. I also have the pleasure of serving as the House Democratic Caucus chairperson in the Louisiana legislature. Most states refer to that position as the minority leader. It's great to have so many progressives in the city of New Orleans. You know, I grew up in a union household. My mother was a public school teacher. She retired after 34 years in the classroom. She was a dedicated member to the teachers union here in the city of New Orleans, known as United Teachers of New Orleans. In fact, as a kid, I used to do my homework during their meetings. My mom would give me and my little brother some money to put in the vending machines and, you know, to keep us quiet, and we would do our homework. But what I didn't understand as a young boy was that my experience in those meetings would be formative for me as I grew into a young adult. What happened in those meetings were people who came together for a common purpose. They wanted the best education for our students. They wanted our teachers to be treated and paid fairly. They wanted to preserve their rights to collective bargaining and to organize. And they unified around those principles, and they put everything else to the side. And I speak about that unity because right now in our country, it is desperately needed. We all know that there are so many issues in the United States of America right now. So many that not one of us, not a few of us, can actually solve them. We must come together, join forces, and work to transform our country, our nation, into a place that is good for everyone. Last year, during the presidential election cycle, President Trump and his MAGA allies made several promises to the people of this country. What did they promise? Cheaper groceries, lower inflation, American manufacturing renaissance. What have we received? Tariffs, chaos, confusion, illegal deportations, subsidies for billionaires and corporations, and mid-cycle redistricting efforts to rig the system. We all saw this coming, Project 2025. We all know what the playbook was. For more than a decade, a lot of our Democratic leaders were asleep at the wheel. And meanwhile, Republicans strategized on how to regain power in local elected seats, state legislatures, and by controlling state legislatures with majorities and supermajorities, they gerrymandered congressional districts and again rigged the system. And right now, we have Trump sycophants all throughout this country. Here in the state of Louisiana, earlier this year, our governor created Louisiana Doge. I have no clue what they have done. I think it was performative, but it did happen. Here in the state of Louisiana, this session, we saw legislation related to ICE that makes the city of New Orleans violate federal consent decrees. We saw bills that make the abortion drugs scheduled controlled substances. We saw anti-vaccine bills. We saw 10 commandments put into our classrooms. We saw attempts to ban DEI. We saw abortion policies with no exception for rape or incest. Louisiana knew what would happen with the Trump administration because we've already been experiencing it. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? Everybody in this room is frustrated, right? We're all frustrated. The good news is that the people of our country are also frustrated. We have to get out and work in the field. We have to register voters, young voters. We have to keep them engaged year-round, not just during the election cycle. We must work with our allies who you're about to hear from, state attorneys general, who are leading the fight in our court systems. Our messaging has to unify, not divide. And in Louisiana specifically, we have to outwork our Republicans on the ground, and we have a blueprint. We can look at what Stacey Abrams did in the state of Georgia. Louisiana is losing Democratic voters year after year after year, and it makes no sense. Do you know why? Louisiana is a very poor state. It makes no sense for so many voters to continue supporting a party that kowtows to the elite, to the rich, and to corporations. For us in this state, we have to message our efforts in the state legislature, our efforts to create a child tax credit, to expand upon the earned income tax credit. We have to talk about how way too many children in Louisiana are dying from firearms and our efforts to create safe storage laws. We have to talk about our efforts to provide, at a minimum, abortion exceptions for rape and incest. We must convince the people of this great state of Louisiana that the Democrats are the party of the working people and the Republicans are the party of the wealthy and the corporations. And we have to work to build out a bench of electable, qualified candidates. Republicans in this country are selling voters a pipe dream, not the American dream. When I grew up, I learned about the American dream. Do well in school, go to college, get a degree, get a job, start a family, buy a home. Life will get better and better and better. Today, the American dream is a sci-fi fantasy for way too many people who call themselves Americans. We have to regain control in this country. We have to let everybody know that Democrats are on the right side of these issues. We have to make sure that the American dream is within reach of everybody in this nation, and we have to do it by working together, building bridges, registering voters, using messaging that will work with our young voters, with people who want to stay away from the political process, and we have to galvanize. Because next year's election cycle is a make-or-break moment for our country. We have to regain control. We have to put a limit on President Trump, and we can't do it alone. So I ask everybody in this room to come off of the sidelines. We can't just talk. We have to walk the walk. We can't just get on social media and complain. We have to propose solutions. And ultimately, when we work together, we will succeed together and restore faith and trust and accountability and transparency in this nation and make sure that it is one that represents the interests of the people. Thank you so much. I welcome you all to the Big Easy, and I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Thank y'all for having me.
Let's welcome our next speaker, Michigan Senate candidate, Abdul El-Sayed.
Good afternoon, Netroots. Let me hear that. Good afternoon, Netroots. There it is. Now look, you all are about to hear from three incredible attorneys general. My name is Abdul El-Sayed. I am running for U.S. Senate. And I want to share a story to put into context exactly what it is that you are about to learn about. So I was raised in the great state of Michigan, where I was born, by my father, who's an immigrant from Egypt, and my stepmom, Jackie, who's a daughter of the American Revolution from right about here in Michigan, all right? And as many of you children of immigrants know, that you start your summer oftentimes getting shipped off to the home country. And that was what a lot of my childhood summers felt like. So I get put on an airplane, often with another family going off to Egypt, and I'd go and hang out with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my cousins. And I'd spend most of my time with my teta Soad, wisest, most intelligent person I have yet to meet in my life, but she never got to go to school. She raised 6 kids of 8 to whom she gave birth. 2 died before their first birthdays. And on those summers, she took the time with me as if I was the most important thing she could take care of. And I remember when I turned 13 one summer, she said, "You can't talk about politics here. I just want you to understand that." So the next day when we went down to the market, you can imagine I picked the choicest words that my cousins had taught me in Arabic and started to cuss about the then president, Hosni Mubarak, at the top of my lungs. You can imagine my grandmother, she was scared to death. She pulled me aside. She said, "I told you you can't talk about politics here." I said, "I'm fine. I'm good. No problems." Until that night. Plainclothes cops came to the house. My grandfather sold vegetables in a fish market. He was one of the toughest guys I have ever met in my life, and I've never seen him scared until then. He said, "Where's your passport?" So I go and I get my passport, and he holds it up like an amulet. He said, "He's American. He has freedom of speech. You can't do anything to him." And they went away. My American passport in 1998 protected my freedom of speech 3,000 miles away. Now, I ran for governor back in 2018, and I remember telling my father I was thinking about doing this, and his response as a child who grew up in a place where you cannot talk about politics was, "They're going to kill you." I'd be like, "What? I'm sorry, what?" This time around, when I told him I was going to run for Senate, he said, "You know what? You have to." I said, "Wait a second. Last time they were going to kill me, this time I got kids. What about my kids, though?" He's like, "No, hear me out. For the better part of 50 years, since I landed on an airplane here in the United States of America, since I became an American citizen, I never worried about what I talked about, to whom I talked about it, where I said it, because I knew that I had rights as an American. And I worry that your daughters, your brothers' sons, that they're growing up in America where those things are no longer true. We know, everybody here in this room understands the threat that we are facing to our democracy. We understand the impending worries about authoritarianism. And I say this as someone who has seen authoritarianism up close and personal. But I want to say something here today. Because it's not enough to stand up for democracy when too often our democracy itself is not delivering the basic means of a dignified life for too many people. Donald Trump, we all understand what it means to have to stand up to him, that we cannot continue to allow him to run roughshod over our Constitution. But we also have to understand that Donald Trump himself is not the disease in our politics. Donald Trump is the worst symptom of the disease. So the question we have to ask is, what is the disease? It's a system that allows corporations, billionaires, would-be oligarchs, to buy and sell politicians in ways that leave them writing the rules so that corporations get bigger, get richer, force us to pay more for the things that we have to buy from them, and suppressing wages and the money we make when we have to go work for them. And if we're serious about saving our democracy, we have to make sure that we take on not just the symptom of the disease, but that we take on the disease itself. And that means that we have to fight the fight around the ways in which our economy, the ways in which our politics have been rigged. So we're running a campaign in Michigan that goes everywhere and talks to everyone. I've been to 45 different cities, done 65 town halls all over my state. No matter where I go, people tell me the same thing. Abdul, it just shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to afford a second bag of groceries. It shouldn't be this hard to work the same job tomorrow that I worked yesterday and know that it's going to be able to give me the paycheck that allows me to pay for my home and the things my kids need. It shouldn't be this hard to breathe clean air or drink clean water. It should not be this hard to see a doctor in the richest, most powerful country in the world. It just shouldn't be this hard. So we're running a campaign to do 3 very simple things. Number 1, we want to stand up to the power of corporations and take corporate money out of politics. No longer Should we continue to sit under the Citizens United regime without even standing up and taking it on? And let's be clear, too often, yes, Republicans have benefited from it, but so have Democrats. Number two, when we do that, we need to fight to put more money in people's pockets. That means building a Federal Trade Commission that'll finally stand up to monopolies and oligopolies. It means making this the best single place to join or form a union, and if you don't have one, and making it the best place to build and scale a small business. And number three, in the richest, most powerful country in the world, y'all know I was gonna talk about this, you can't be a doctor running for Senate and not talk about the scourge of medical debt. In the richest, most powerful country in the world, the medical debt in this country should not equal more than the GDP of half US states. We can abolish medical debt and we can finally get about the work of passing Medicare for all. Now look, I'm not supposed to run for office. I knew as much when my name was Abdul. And here's the thing about it though. Here in these United States of America, we're blessed with the ideal of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We don't have that now, but we can yet fight for it. And when they tell me, Abdul, you can't win your name though, my point is always, this is not about me, it's not about my name. It's not even about one US Senate seat. It's about the ideals of our democracy. Are we willing to step back in to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? Are we willing to reach out and hold our hands together, not despite our differences, but perhaps because of our differences, to build something that is greater than the sum of its parts? We here at Netroots, this work is about connecting with people and creating the infrastructure that connects them. This work has never been more important than it is today. It is the foundation, the infrastructure, both to make sure that our democracy exists and continues to deliver, but also to take on the fascism that we are seeing coming out of DC, emanating its tentacles into communities all over our states and our country. This work could not be more hallowed, could not be more holy than it is today, and this is the work we're here today to do together. So I'm so grateful that you all showed up, that you all showed out, that you all are doing the work of democracy, and I look forward to walking that path alongside you. Thank you all so much.
From the great state of Tennessee, please give a warm Netroots welcome to State Representative Justin J. Pearson.
How we doing? How we doing, Netroots? I say, how we doing, Netroots? You all look absolutely fantastically amazing and extraordinary. In District 86, we start the same way. I say, who fired up? You say, we fired up. You ready? Who fired up? Who fired up? Who fired up? Yes, we fired up. We fired up because we've got to be, when a white supremacist domestic terrorist is president of the United States and is doing everything he can to destroy democracy, we've got to be fired up. Got to be fired up when Elon Musk and the billionaire class are continuing to rig the rules for their benefit while leaving working class and middle class folks to suffer. We've got to be fired up when the Department of Justice is being weaponized against people like Letitia James and against Texas House Democrats. We've got to be fired up because our future is at stake. Our hope for what we want to see in our cities, in our towns, in our communities, and across this country is what's at stake. We've got to be fired up. And if you live in a state like I do, that's been rigged red, you've seen many things that have happened at the state level now going national. We've seen it in Tennessee, in South Dakota, in Wyoming, all across the country, being the lab rats for autocracy that has now become the way that things are. Laws aren't being passed for people. They're being passed for lobbyists and for corporations. It's no longer a government by the consent of the governed. It's a government by the consent of the highest bidder. And that's the way that Republicans want to keep it. But we got some different goals. And even in moments where it is difficult, in moments that it is dark and sometimes gloomy, we have to be steadfast and unmovable in our faith in democracy and our faith in one another. Dr. King would often say, only when it is darkest can you see the stars. And I think about that often because we're living in some pretty dark days and we're having some pretty difficult struggles. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. Obviously, my wife, Oceanae Argillium, is here. We just bought a home, and it's 3 miles away from where Elon Musk has built an illegal gas plant, polluting the very air that we breathe. We're in some difficult times. But I remember the words of my mama and daddy whenever we had to clean up on Saturdays, which I hated to do, my 4 brothers and I. And whenever you get a little bit lazy or a little too tired looking, they say, you got to put your hands on something. And in this moment and in this time, my friends, my fellow progressives, my people who believe in a movement for justice rooted in love, we've got to put our hands on something. And we see how this happens and the transformation that's possible when we do that work. I'm fortunate to work with Bold Alliance, and I know Jane Clay benefits agreements for communities that for so long have been disempowered, for so long have been told that you don't have a voice. We know that there are places where even when it is dark, the stars are still shining. When folks in Texas, the Texas House Democrats, leave the state because the governor is trying to gerrymander in order to take 5 congressional seats away from Democrats. But while they are leaving the state, they are truly standing up and showing up for democracy and for the best of who we are. When I look at Memphis, and I look at what is happening to us with thousands of tons of nitrogen oxides being pumped into the air, 17.2 tons of formaldehyde, and get weary, I think about 81-year-old Willie Joe. His family's been in the area of Boxtown for 139 years, and he says, I'm going to keep fighting as long as I can. Or Mama Easter, who at 76 lost her husband a month ago, her sister 2 months ago due to respiratory illnesses, who says, I've got to keep fighting and being in this fight for justice, this fight for clean air, because that is what they will want for me to do. I get a little bit more courage, a little bit more hope, and even being here at Netroots, you all are stars amidst darkness. There are people who continue to give it all they've got. Young students at Tigers Against Pollution, Memphis Community Against Pollution, all these organizations that are getting together that in Memphis, Tennessee, had 500 people show up to a public hearing for clean air. There are some stars amidst the darkness. And look, when we see these attacks on DEI, on the universities, on the EEOC, the housing and urban development, trying to fight for civil rights, people giving money, public dollars to private institutions, we can get tired. We can get heavy laden and burdened. But I really just stopped by today to tell you that it's time to fight. I know we all got our jobs that we're in. We all have the work that we are doing. But in this moment and in this time, we've got to fight. When I say it's time, you say to fight. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time to fight like Frederick Douglass, John Brown, and Ida B. Wells. It's time. It's time to fight like Martin and Coretta, Medgar and Murley, Malcolm and Betty Shabazz. It's time to fight like Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm and Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, if I fall, I'll fall 5 feet 4 inches forward in the fight for freedom. I'm not backing down. It's time to fight for fair wages for everybody because one job should be enough. It's time to fight for Medicare for all because you deserve to have health care because you are a person, not because you have a particular job. It's time to fight for our public schools because everybody in every city, in every suburb, in every county, in every town across the United States of America deserves to ensure that their children are able to learn and become the leaders that we need for them to be. It's time to fight for an environment and a climate that is just. We see what is happening when the polluters are running the government. The people are responsible for running the government, and it's time to fight for the ideals that we believe in, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's time. It's time. It's time to fight until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream right here in these United States of America. And I'm glad to be on the battlefield with you. I'm glad to march with you, to work with you, to fight with you, because it's time. It's time to fight. God bless you.
Please give a warm welcome to the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, Vince Warren.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Vince Warren. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Rights, based in New York, New York. And you're going to hear a great panel after this from the Attorneys General. And I'm a lawyer. I'm definitely a lawyer. But you're going to hear something different from me than you might hear from them. More in line with what Justin Pearson was talking about than talking about boring Supreme Court precedent. So, the Center for Constitutional Rights, we are a legal and advocacy organization that's been around for 60 years. Our job in this moment is to put ourselves between the bad guys and the people that the bad things are happening to. So, we represent people that have been abducted in immigration raids. We represent people who are being sent to Guantanamo for the purposes of being deported. We represent queer and trans people in jail whose medication has been taken away. We do all of this work, but it's not so much about the work that we're doing that's important. And I want to begin with something simple, but it's urgent, which is if you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling disoriented, maybe even a little bit afraid, you're not alone. We are living through a time that feels surreal and yet all too real, a time when the very idea of truth is under siege, when justice is being rewritten line by line, law by law, to serve the powerful and to punish the rest. But I didn't come here to bathe in our despair. I came here to remind you who we are and why we fight. At the Center for Constitutional Rights, we have always understood that law is a tool, but like any tool, it can be used to build or it can be used to break, and we've seen both. We saw it in the Bush administration when they tried to convince us that torture was legal. Y'all remember that? We saw it in the Obama administration when they tried to tell us that drone killings were surgical. You remember that? We saw it in the Trump administration, the first time this man turned cruelty into public policy, targeting Muslims, immigrants, trans kids, and anyone who dared to dissent. And now in 2025, we are watching something even more dangerous unfold. We are seeing the legal scaffolding of authoritarianism being assembled right in front of our eyes. This is not about one man. This is about money, language, and institutions being shaped into weapons. It's about fear being deployed as strategy. It's about the law being twisted, not to deliver justice, but to enforce submission. So we gather because we know something that history has taught us time and again, is that when the law is used to repress, we must resist. When the government tries to erase people, we must make them visible. When they jail us, we get them out. When they marginalize our people, we center them. And when they say comply, we say no. At the Center for Constitutional Rights, we've been in the struggle against authoritarianism not just in the last year, the last decade, but for 60 years, from defending Fannie Lou Hamer in the 1960s, to representing the anti-war protesters in the 1970s, to suing the Klan in the 1980s, to suing the CIA for torture in the 2000s, to standing up for Black Lives Matter and Palestinian organizers. Our mission has always been clear. Fight by partnering with those most under threat and whose lived experience best informs the changes that are needed. And let me tell you, 2025, this work has never been more urgent. This year alone, Trump has escalated its attacks on migrants, on Muslims, on queer folks, on Black educators, movement organizations. Entire swaths of the constitutional rights have been hollowed out. Nonprofit leaders are being criminalized and organizations are being investigated. People are being deported to torture, speech is surveilled, and condemning a genocide is now being labeled as anti-Semitic domestic terrorism. Now, we like to use the word unprecedented to describe this man and this work, but it's not unprecedented at all. And in fact, I am not going to stand here on Chatayakini and Chitimachi land, and I will not use that term because it does grave disservice to the people that have suffered, fought, died, and were displaced, deported, and caged here during the centuries of atrocities in this very place. In 1706, French colonialists raided the Chitimachi people, killed thousands of them, enslaved the rest, and took their land. Just 10 years later, the Spanish brought 2,000 Africans here as enslaved people. And that's how Louisiana got started. But you all are lucky to know this, as terrible as it is, because last year, Governor Landry signed an executive order banning critical race theory in public schools. So this isn't actually being taught to our children. Here's another thing they're not teaching. Colette Pichon Battle, the wonderful leader who was giving a keynote earlier, took me to the Houma lands a few years ago. After being forcibly relocated to the south, the Houma are now losing a football field's worth of land every 90 minutes due to the climate crisis. And still, this administration only wants to accelerate that crisis. But they are still resisting. In 1811, enslaved people in St. Charles and St. John's the Baptist parish mounted the largest slave rebellion in U.S. history, which was put down violently. Today, that parish, St. James, and other river parishes are called Cancer Alley because it has the highest rate of cancer anywhere in the country due to the proliferation of toxic industries. But the descendants of those enslaved people are resisting. And they've called for a moratorium on new plant builds in a lawsuit that we filed. This state couldn't be bothered to have unanimous juries to convict black people during criminal trials. But organizations such as Promise for Justice Initiative are resisting and have gotten people released from cages. We were happy to be part of those efforts. With just these three issues that I talked about, people in this state have been resisting for a total of 319 years, fighting with everything they have for their land, their health, their children, their dignity. They are not cooperating, and this is a lesson for all of us. So the thing about authoritarianism is that the success of the far right is necessarily dependent on the capitulation of the middle. It only works if people cooperate or pretend that it's not happening. And at CCR, we've chosen not to cooperate. Because as lawyers, you're either a part of the movement or you're part of the problem. So we are proud lawyers for the movement. The institutionalists always get it wrong. They say that if you fight for constitutional rights for everyone, it will be great for black, brown, and queer folks. But the problem is that the Constitution has never really worked right for those of us that are put on the margins, and then try to tell the truth about it. The Constitution didn't end slavery, didn't prevent the Japanese Americans from being put in concentration camps, didn't prevent the 4 episodes of mass deportations of Latinx people in the 20th and 21st century, and didn't prevent the illegal detentions in Guantanamo or the mass roundups of Muslims and Arabs after 9/11. So the next time you hear a lawyer say that they're defending the Constitution, know that that's only the bare minimum, and know that that's not the only thing that I'm doing, what CCR is doing. So if you're only lawyering to protect the institutions in this environment, you're not seeing the big picture. If you're lawyering to protect people, on the other hand, the people will win. Institutions and election cycles do not stop colonialism, torture, enslavement, and they certainly don't stop genocide, as we know. What they do is they tend to enable these things and punish the people who call for their abolishment. So what does stop each of these things in the face of government hell-bent on bombing, starving, deporting, killing, and caging folks? What stops that? People. Us. People who resist, people who refuse to comply. So we must declare loudly and clearly, we will not comply. We will not comply with unjust laws. We will not comply with fear. We will not comply with being criminalized. And we will refuse to distance ourselves from the people that the state does criminalize. We will not wait to see if the courts do our work for us, because they won't. Collectively, 90% of our cases win like hell in the lower and the appellate courts, but 70% lose in the Supreme Court. We will not be silent. We will not be contemplative or deliberative when, as now, action is needed. Some people regret speaking up too early, but everybody regrets speaking up too late. and it's 1:15 on the clock right now. So we need a commitment. All right, the problem is that we need a commitment during my talk, so y'all have 1 minute and 45 seconds to commit. For those of you on the fence, think about it. I really don't want to have to change the name of my organization to the Center for What's Left of Your Constitutional Rights, so I do need your commitment. Our resistance must be bold, it must be moral, it must be spiritual, it must be collective. We need lawyers who refuse to launder oppression in the language of the law. We need artists who create freedom where there is only fear. We need organizers who move at the speed of trust and the scale of urgency. We need communities that say, we protect us. We need electeds that have both eyes on the end of authoritarianism and not one eye on their upcoming election, y'all. So do not ask me for my vote if you're not willing to go to jail for resisting. Do not ask me for my vote if you are not willing to get me out of jail for resisting. Do not ask me for my vote if your decision point depends on you waiting to see what the Supreme Court will do, whether we are successful in getting the immigrant folks out of detention, or waiting to see how your constituents are reacting to the rising body count in Gaza. Do not ask me for your vote. Do not ask me for your vote unless you are ready to abandon the Democratic Party and join the opposition party. And now in 2025, when they came for Mahmoud Khalil, we got him out of jail. We got him out of the cage and sued the government for $20 million. Just today, we filed a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections in Georgia for their policy to refuse essential life-giving medication for trans people who were locked up. So let me be clear, this is not a moment for neutrality. If you are a lawyer, fight like your damn license is a tool of liberation and not just a trophy on your office wall. If you are a teacher, teach truth even when it's banned. If you are a nonprofit, put the doggone DEI statement back up on your website. Take a stand on Palestine and spend more time with the people that you serve than with your bosses. And if you are a normal, average person, understand that silence will not save you. It will not save us. The work of resistance must be joyful, it must be collective, and it must be unyielding. All right, so are y'all ready? People in this room, are we the people that say no? Will you comply? No. Will you concede? No. Will you capitulate? No. Are we the people that say yes? Will you fight like hell for the future? Yes. Will you fight for migrants and immigrants? Yes. Will you fight for our people? Yes. Would you fight for our movements and our lands? Yes. Will you fight for a free Palestine? Yes. Then let me leave you with these words from Ella Baker, one of the guiding stars at CCR. Strong people do not need strong leaders, and friends, you are those strong people. So let's go out from this place not exhausted, not daunted, not afraid, but fiercely determined and full of the radical belief that even in the face of this horrible repression, we can and must build something beautiful. Thank you.
Kimberlé Crenshaw is the Executive Director of the African American Policy Forum, a gender and racial justice legal think tank, and the founder and Executive Director of the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies at Columbia Law School. A leading authority on civil rights, Black feminist legal theory, and race, racism, and the law, Crenshaw is known for her development of intersectionality, critical race theory, and the Say Her Name campaign. Whew. Let's welcome Kimberlé Crenshaw to the stage.
Hello, good afternoon, Roots Nation. Well, it is such an honor to be invited back. We were here last year. We were sounding the alarm about the many risks that we were facing as a nation. We talked about how racial resentments, historical distortions, attacks on knowledge, on history, were the Trojan horses in which a wholesale assault on our democracy traveled. We talked about Project 2025 in detail. We talked about the radical agenda that it contained. So here we are a year later. I want to ask the good people who are gathered here, what in the world can we say about the state of our democracy? I want to ask how many of you are surprised by the current state of our democracy? Are you surprised? Okay, I'm going to make a confession to you because honestly, I am surprised about the state of our democracy. I confess, when I look at the headlines, when I see so many of the protections and the assumptions and the commitments and the norms being undermined on a day-to-day basis, I'm shocked. But I'm not shocked by the fact that they attempted to do it. That was what Project 2025 told us. There's no surprise there. The surprise is the ease in which they've been able to do it. The surprise is the militarization of immigration enforcement. The surprise is the defunding of Social Security and international aid. The surprise is the dismantling of hard-fought labor protections. All of this was clearly laid out. What I'm particularly surprised about is how they've achieved these goals through appeasement, through acquiescence, even collaboration among people, institutions, friends who we trusted to safeguard our democracy. We have seen media organizations censoring content and handing over millions of dollars to push through corporate mergers. We have seen elite law firms, and let me say, I'm not just talking about the middle of the road or even conservative law firms. I'm talking about law firms that built their reputations on their commitments to engaging politically challenging pro bono work. We've seen them fold to the administration's shakedown and willingly offer free legal services to a new regime. We've seen elite universities, and I'm going to talk about my own, Columbia University, bend the knee to this extortion, all while throwing free speech, academic freedom, and their own admissions policies under the bus. Now, while the collaboration of these major institutions has received some, not enough, some attention, we also have to account for the everyday ways that millions of people are falling into line, sometimes without even being asked. So just last week, the New York Times reported that employees of the National Park Service and visitors have willingly participated in the administration's call to root out improper ideology from our monuments and other sites of history. And the most frequently targeted material has to do with African Americans' struggle for equality, from slavery to Jim Crow. So for example, a plaque at the Stones River National Battlefield in Tennessee, the site of one of the bloodiest struggles in the Civil War, was flagged for addressing slavery as the primary cause of the Civil War, which of course it was. The employee who flagged this plaque for review believed that the plaque was accurate, but sought clearance anyway, given the administration's determination to only promote so-called positive stories about America. Now, there's a name for this. Historian Timothy Snyder calls this anticipatory obedience. You heard about this just a few minutes ago from Vince Warren. But let me define it in the way that Timothy Snyder does. It's a form of self-censorship, of over-compliance, where individuals or institutions go beyond what is legally and officially mandated, often out of fear or desire to avoid potential conflict or repercussions. This is the cornerstone of fascism, and we're seeing it everywhere. As we observe this anticipatory compliance everywhere, surprised and disappointed though we may be, the moment warrants that we reflect and understand why it is so challenging to get our bearings in this moment, to understand it for what it is. What renders this so illegible for so many of us? What is missing from our public discourse that allows us to understand what needs to be done? One thing that is missing is our own history. This country has been brought to the brink of collapse before by those who'd rather break this country than to share it. It was called the Civil War. It was called the overthrow of Reconstruction. This is the history that is being actively suppressed, leaving us unable to fully learn the lessons from our past. When that Confederate flag that accompanied 1,000 people who alleged that this country was being stolen from them by voters in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee, Phoenix, there was a clear message being sent about who this country was supposedly belonging to and who was fighting to keep it for themselves. That was a clear wake-up call. We needed to talk more about white supremacy, more about racial exclusion, more about marginalization, but instead, we talk less. Those alarm bells were not nearly as loud as they should have been. The second distortion is the belief that our country must look abroad to determine the scope of the danger that we're in. But this simply denies our own history of tyranny. The language of fascism spoken here in America, that language and the racial history that it embodies is something that Langston Hughes himself said. We Negroes in America do not need to be told what fascism is. We know. We have lived it. Lastly, it is a misunderstanding about law, and especially a misunderstanding about the role that states can play in protecting us against the tyranny that is now emanating from DC. When we say states' rights in the same sentence as civil rights, to many people that seems like an oxymoron. But in fact, as we'll hear today, from our distinguished attorneys general, their fight to protect their citizens and the citizens of the nation is an expression of states' rights. And it turns out, people, that this is not new. It was the states who fought against the federal government, who attempted to kidnap people from their homes, spirit them away to lands that they never lived in, to conditions that are abusive. Does this sound familiar? You think I'm just talking about what's happening right now? This happened historically. It happened to black people. It happened to enslaved people. It happened to people who were accused of stealing themselves for freedom. So when we take our history into account, when we understand the role of our states and our lawyers, we are better able to meet this moment. So this is the kind of conversation that we need to have. We need to be able to have it and not be afraid of it. So there are many other dimensions of this moment that warrant conversation, but what we're going to talk about right now is the way that the descent into tyranny has been facilitated through marginalization, through racism, and through the unwillingness of us to talk about it. So you will hear how attorneys general safeguarded schools, health research, and equitable policing practices in their communities. We will name the fear that pushes institutions to fold and the safeguards that we need to hold them upright. So when we lift up those who are fighting back and learn from this history, we can set a new agenda. So instead of anticipatory obedience today, we want to build a template for the exact opposite. Preemptive alliance. Preemptive alliance. So instead of appeasement, we're calling for resistance. Instead of capitulation, we're calling for fortitude. Instead of settlement, we're calling for disruption. So are you ready to go to work, Netroots Nation? Are you ready to hear from the lawyers who are on the front line fighting for our democracy? All right, so let's go. Please join me in welcoming first Attorney General Keith Ellison, who took a moment that shook the world. So after winning convictions in the George Floyd case, his team secured a consent decree with real timelines and public benchmarks. He arrives with proof that preparation moves the needle and that communities keep the heartbeat between court dates moving. Welcome, Keith. Please also join Attorney General Rob Bonta from my state of California.
Thank you.
His office set up a litigation fund, scaled the team, and moved with speed to keep money flowing to classrooms, clinics, bridges, and research. Bonta marries courtroom wins with Know Your Rights briefings, multilingual guidance, and practical tools for schools, for employers, and nonprofits. Welcome, Rob. And last but not least, please welcome Attorney General Matthew Platkin. So, Attorney General Platkin brings a planner's precision and a neighbor's cadence to New Jersey. When federal lawyers signaled retreat in cases that would protect families, his office stepped in so that lawful protection still had a champion in the court. He gives institutions a steadier way to stand firm, confirm the law, count your state protections, call allies, document pressure, brief your people, and keep faith with the mission. Welcome, Matthew, and welcome all of our attorneys general. All right. So I'm the new kid on the block. They have been going around the country having these conversations with citizens so they are aware not only of what their rights are, but they're aware what we have to do. They can hold their role. But the first thing they'll tell you is that it's not enough. We all have to be actively engaged. So what we're going to do in this conversation is talk about the fight back, talk about what a non-appeasement strategy looks like, talk about where there's room to fight and what happens when we don't fight. At the end of the day, though, the question is how we are going to become mobilized. So let's get started. The first round of this, I'm going to ask each of our AGs to describe an issue or a moment where instead of yielding, they've used their power to defend their communities, while others have chosen to comply. So Keith, I want to come to you first. You know, I mentioned 2020.
Sure.
It seemed like a half a century ago now. But beyond the successful prosecution of Derek Chauvin, you have been able to push forward reforms that came out of that tragic situation. The federal government, however, has stepped back. They've removed key safeguards, including a federal judge who would compel compliance, independent monitors that would track progress, timelines with public data reporting that keeps reforms on schedule. So for those who are skeptical about the scope of reform and its meaningfulness, can you outline what is lost when a federal consent decree is withdrawn, and what steps you have taken in Minnesota as the Attorney General to hold the line.
Yeah, well, what's lost is oversight. You should know that a few years ago, back in 2020, maybe about 1,000 people would, die in a officer-involved interaction. And now it's about 1,200, which is really tragic. But you should
more people are being killed.
Now they are, yeah, the numbers have increased. But you should know that these things are devastating to communities, because one thing is that if you just total up the civil rights lawsuits in Minneapolis, we've spent $100 million in just paying police misconduct payouts. New York has paid way more, LA has paid more, and a lot of places have paid more. That's just civil lawsuits. Then, if you have a horrible relationship between police and community, there will be a civil uprising. That can cost billions in terms of lives. And then there's trust. And in a progressive audience, I really want to say this to you all. It is a bad thing when you cannot have a trust relationship with the people who are sworn to protect and serve you, because what happens is that people don't call on the people who are supposed to protect and serve them, and the reality is you will see crime spikes. It's a statistical reality that correlates. And what is the price on that? When an officer says, "Did you hear that domestic violence thing in your building?" and people say no because they just don't trust the police, that's devastating to communities. So it is important that we solve this problem. So when Trump 2 said we're not going to enforce any federal consent decrees, we lost oversight. We lost the opportunity to establish high standards so that people could feel that they could really trust the people who's supposed to protect and serve them. We lost this, and it hurt community. And quite honestly, and some of y'all might be surprised, but I have to be honest and tell you, there were a lot of police officers who wanted that oversight because they want to work in a department where they feel good about what they do, and they don't want the worst elements in their department to control the department. And they felt that the consent decree was a way to finally create a culture where good police work, protecting and serving and with respect and constitutionality, could be rewarded, and bad conduct would be punished. And that's the kind of departments, there's 18,000 police departments in America. So the loss of that tool is harmful, devastating, and is ultimately going to make Minneapolis less safe. But not only Minneapolis, think about places like Memphis, think about a lot of other cities where we really do need those critical reforms. And I'll just say this before I wrap up. Trump won. Before George Floyd was murdered, Trump won. He gets rid of the consent decrees all over the country. Then he goes to Suffolk County Police Department and says to a graduating class of police officers, "Hey, when you're getting them arrested and you're putting them in the car, don't worry about putting your hand over their head. Just let them bash their head." He says this in front of the crowd. The chief says, "Don't be saying stuff like that." But anyway, he does it. He says all this. He says uncuff the police, and it creates an atmosphere of lawlessness, which I believe helped precipitate what happened to George Floyd. Yes, 4 officers killed George Floyd, but the climate that this president created helped to kill George Floyd. And, we had the largest mass protest in the country over the course of that time. Ever. And so let me just stop right there and say, this is bad for your city. This is bad for our country. And it's another example of why we have to stand up against this tyrannical authoritarian. So.
And Keith, while you're on that, thank you for that. What have you been able to do in your capacity as the state's Attorney General to reinforce these new commitments?
So we prosecuted not just Chauvin, but we prosecuted all 4 of the officers who did this. And we got convictions on all of them. They all went to prison. But here's the thing. I knew, and I said at the time, I don't want anybody to say, okay, we took care of that, done. We needed meaningful cultural reform within this department. And the only way to get it, so I represented the state of Minnesota, and the state of Minnesota sued the city of Minneapolis for pattern and practice of racial discrimination and unconstitutional policing practices. And we had massive reform in those practices, including things like complaints filed have to be resolved within a certain amount of time. They can't just languish on the chief's desk forever. Things like stopping no-knock policies, stopping chase policies, stopping certain chokehold policies, and so there were a number of things. I'm not claiming we have nirvana, but we are very fortunate that we don't have to rely on Trump to maintain that. But the federal partner is an important partner, a critical partner, and the loss of them is hard for us. And so again, he did damage. You should know, though, and the people ask me, what if he pardoned Chauvin? Well, he's still got state charges. He owes He owes us 22 and a half years.
There you have it.
So, there you go.
And you know, so it was something I worried about when he let go all of the people involved in January 6th. And I said, oh no, Keith got him on lock.
Right.
That Chauvin's not going anywhere.
So those people on January 6th injured 140 officers who guard the Capitol. Several of them died. One of them lost their eye, and he just let them go.
Yeah.
So that tells you what he thinks about law enforcement.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you just to put one final point on it, because that is a contradiction, right? He claims to be a supporter of law enforcement. He goes, to the academies and says, handcuffs off, do what you got to do. And on the other hand, he releases people who have damaged police officers and even killed them. So what is the moral of that story?
The moral of the story is, if police officers are acting in an unconstitutional way that might include even racial bias, he's for them. If they uphold the law against him by stopping people he sent to the Capitol to destroy the Capitol, he's against them, right? So it is pure. He is very consistent when it comes to authoritarian, tyrant sort of behavior when it comes to law enforcement. He doesn't, for example, demand that law enforcement show their face when they enforce immigration laws. He doesn't require that they abide by basic constitutional principles, because that's not what he's trying to do. He's weaponizing police against a free democratic people, which jeopardizes our freedom.
Yeah.
And this is a critical issue, because whether you have a democratic society or not, a lot of it turns on how the police are being used.
That's right.
Against the people. And you can have a police state very easily with this guy.
Yeah. And part of this theme is none of this is new. We've seen this before. We've seen the unleashing of police power. We've seen what happens when the police are turned against democracy rather than for it. A.G. Platkin, let me come to you. So in February of this year, a Dear Colleague letter was issued by the federal government in hopes of pressuring educational institutions to dismantle their DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm going to say the word, right? Because if they're opposed to diversity, equity, inclusion, I want them to tell me what part of that they are opposed to.
Right.
And in the face of this, you publicly affirmed New Jersey's commitment to inclusive schooling. And you did that even though many people believe that this was a losing issue. So we know others have sacrificed these values on the altar of expedience. So can you share not only what your office did to defend these educational initiatives, but why you felt it was so important to stand on those principles?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me, and to Netroots, thank you for you all for being here. They come to New Orleans in August and show the support for what we're standing up for. Look, the Dear Colleague letter is a great example of what this administration has done. By the way, It came out on Valentine's Day at like 7 p.m. East Coast time. I got it when I was having dinner with my wife, which I probably shouldn't admit that she's a school psychologist, so this is what we do. But you read that letter, and what does it say? I mean, it's a long page, it's several pages, but what it basically said is, if you have anything that they consider to be DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, without defining, even attempting to define what it means, you lose the entirety of your federal public education spending. 100%. That's what that letter said. And then there's been several iterations of that same threat over the past 5 or 6 months. And so, we've done a number of things, and I'm really proud to be here with Keith and Rob and several of our colleagues. We've sued on it, we've put guidance out, but we need to remember, it's true with the law enforcement context, it's true with this discussion, what are we talking about here? Whose lives are being affected? Now, I'm the Attorney General, but I'm a parent. I got 2 young kids.
Right.
I have kids in public school. Okay, I've taken on issues that are not super, I guess, now popular with respect to trans youth and DEI in our schools. And I can tell you, okay, my 6-year-old, there is a 0% chance that the Martin Luther King Day event, the same kind of event that President Trump had in the Oval Office that would qualify as a DEI event under his own directive, is going to hurt my kid. But what will hurt him is cutting those education fundings. What will hurt him is refusing to stop a gun violence epidemic that is hurting our youth, or taking on a social media crisis that's creating a mental health epidemic. Those are things we can have a conversation about our kids' well-being. It's not this nonsense. And we have to fight, I know we're going to talk about this, we have to fight in court, but you all are fighting in the court of public opinion. And I'll tell you, I'll finish with this. I was just saying to Rob, I coach my kids' sports, and I was on the soccer field. And a mom who I know, but not super well, came up to me shortly after this letter came out. And she said to me, my older child is severely autistic. And she was almost in tears, and she said, the only time of the day where I am not afraid and worried for his safety is when I take him to school, and I know because he has a one-on-one aide, funded, by the way, through IDEA. I know Secretary McMahon doesn't know what that is, but this parent does. She feels safe for her kid. So the idea that they would threaten them and threaten these parents with clearly illegal actions over something they can't even bother to define because they think it's in their political interest. I think those of us on the stage went into public service to help people, not to use our positions to hurt people. And we need to tell those stories because we are winning. And we should. There is no reason why kids in high school shouldn't have a gay-straight alliance if that's what they want to participate in. There's no reason why we shouldn't teach about the history of this country. But that's what they want to create a fear around in a way that punishes ordinary people.
So let me follow up on that, because I think, again, when I think about lay folks and they see the law, they see these edicts, I think it's puzzling to them to think that you can outlaw something that you can't define. That you can, redline things out of our public education system, out of our administrative state, that they cannot even define. So how does the threat, for those who bowed to it, how did it work? Given the fact that everybody knows they do not know exactly what they're talking about, and it's not clear what kind of practices or policies actually violate their sense of the law. How are they able to weaponize this?
Well, and you know this so well, because it's not about the facts here, right? Trans kids are 1% or less of the population, but they're making them seem like every kid. Again, there's a 0% chance that a gender pronoun in my kid's classroom is going to make him less safe. It's just not going to happen. But they want to make you think the entire conversation about parental involvement in our kids' lives is based on that issue, and not the whole other set of issues that parents, like all of us, think about our kids. And so the idea here is to create fear so that institutions just say, you know what? And people who are running these institutions just say, it's easier for me not to pick this fight. I don't need this fight right now. That's a very slippery slope.
Yes.
Because you know what? If they can do it to DEI conversations in schools or trans youth or gay kids or whoever, then they can do it to you. If certain rights don't matter based on what the president says on a sheet of paper, look, we litigated birthright citizenship, something we put in the Constitution after we fought a civil war.
Right.
And he tried to rewrite it with a stroke of a pen, and people thought it was a joke. Well, that case went up to the United States Supreme Court. It's not a joke to me.
Yeah.
And so we got to stand up, and institutions need to stand up, and I hope you guys are energized and make sure that folks understand the importance of this and how much it matters in people's lives, because it is affecting ordinary people every single day. They may think it's a political game, and maybe to some of them it is. I know you know this. It is not a political game to millions of Americans across this country.
Yeah, thank you so much. And of course, you know, part of this conversation is the consequences of not fighting, right? And you all are the counterexample. What also exists out there is how often they were able to shut down policies and practices in education they didn't like, even though they couldn't define it. We've been talking for the last 8 years about how they went after CRT, critical race theory. They couldn't define it, but they could scare people enough that they were willing to let other folks come in and dictate what could be taught. And once that starts, then of course, it's a slippery slope, as you said before. All the reason why we have to fight this when it first shows up, not wait until it gets to our doorstep.
That's right.
So Attorney General Bonta, on April 4th, you filed a 16-state suit, America Public Health Association versus NIH, after the administration abruptly canceled more than 50 peer-reviewed NIH grants focused on things like Black maternal mortality, HIV in Latino communities, indigenous mental health, and other race-conscious research topics. And they did this without any scientific review. They offered no public rationale for any of their decisions other than the blanket, it's DEI. Interestingly enough, a judge, and I want to tell you, this judge was a Reagan appointee, so I'm putting that out there so you can understand how significant his finding was. He called the evidence of racial animus and discrimination the most palpable I have seen in 40 years. This is a Reagan appointee denouncing this racism. So take us inside this fight. Which facts or what data was decisive in this judge's description? And why did you move to litigation instead of seeking a private settlement that would have paused or perhaps gutted these life-saving studies?
Well, first, let me just say thank you for the opportunity to be here at Netroots, and honored to be on this amazing panel. We don't run to the White House to take a knee to the Mr. Trump and at the White House like others have done. For us, it's simple. You don't break the law, we don't sue. You break the law, we sue. Pretty straightforward. And this is an administration that, if it was measured by how blatantly and brazenly and consistently and frequently it has broken the law, it would be the most successful presidential administration in the history of America. It is through the roof with its volume and the severity of its violations of the law. And it's incumbent upon us as attorneys general, an incredible team of attorneys general from across the nation, to hold this presidential administration, the president, accountable. No one is above the law, not even the president, and we will take you to court and sue you when you break the law. So it was simple. The attempt to withhold National Institute of Health grant funding was in violation of the law. This is critical funding that funds a lot of the research that you've just described, things like Alzheimer's and cancer research. It's led to incredible breakthroughs and therapies and cures when it comes to trauma and HIV/AIDS and other aspects. Universities receive millions of dollars a year for this groundbreaking research, including in California. It creates a lot of jobs and economic activity. And the Trump administration was focused on grants that were associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender-affirming care, and vaccine hesitancy, among other things. So they're waging the culture wars through their withholding of grants and their actions. And the power of the purse belongs to Congress, by the way, not to the president. The president desperately wants that power. He craves it. He covets it. He keeps trying to exercise it. And we are the ones that are stopping him. And it is not his authority to be able to withhold these National Institutes of Health grants. And this is critical healthcare funding that supports diverse communities. And so we took him to court and we sued him. And with our cases, we sue when we believe we will win based on the facts and the law. You put us in front of any judge who will give us a fair shot, look at the facts, apply the law, we believe we will win. If you're a Republican appointee, like the appointee here, or if you're another appointee. And it was stark and telling that this judge found that this action from the federal government, the government that's supposed to protect our rights and defend our rights and defend the Constitution. The president rose his hand and swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States, and then proceeded to break them and attack those rights and trample over those freedoms. So a judge saying that, without mincing words, that this, that this is a violation of rights, a discrimination against the LGBTQ community, that there was racial discrimination. He didn't beat around the bush and sugarcoat it. And we need that. That honest, unintimidated, unbullied, unbossed courage to speak truth to power, to speak out when you see it. And so we brought the case, we got the order, we were proud of it. But I think that what was at the root of it, that we fight and we hold you accountable. We don't capitulate, we don't acquiesce, we don't go cut a deal and give you something because you tried to violate our rights. How does that make any sense? And so, we were I was proud of that one, and I think that's an example of us fighting back.
And for those of us who are, sitting over in the rafters watching it, we jumped up and down. First, when the suit happened, and then, when this judge said what this judge said, it was like, okay, there is a reality here that people are willing to acknowledge. One of the things that I have wondered is whether, because this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because of the attack on marginalized populations, is framed as a culture war, the real harms that actually happen, the fact that lives are being lost through this culture war, is sometimes erased. So this pushback and this making concrete, people will die when they don't have access to research. People will lose their lives because of that. This isn't just a war about ideas. This is a war that's material. Human lives depend and turn on that. Your effort to fight back makes that real. I guess the question is, why aren't more attorneys general seeing the example that you all are setting and recognizing that their commitment to their citizens means that they have to fight?
I mean, that's a great question that needs to be posed and directed directly to the Republican attorneys general. It does not apply to the Democratic attorneys general whatsoever. We, as a group, as a team, we are suing, we are fighting, we are pushing back, we are holding the Trump administration accountable, we are standing up for our people, we are not letting their rights and freedoms get trampled over, we are not letting their funding get pulled from them unlawfully and illegally. When we, early on, earlier this year, we were seeking universal injunctions in some of our cases that applied nationwide. And my theory was that the red state Republican AGs were secretly rooting for us. That they didn't have to publicly cross Trump and not be the loyalist and apologist that they wanted to be in his eyes, but they would benefit from our work. They could draft behind us while we went into court and protected their funding, protected the constitutional rights of their people. They can no longer do that. You have to be a party to the case now to get the relief relief sought.
right.
And so they're going to really have to answer to their constituents and tell them why they are letting their constitutional rights be trampled over. They're letting them not have birthright citizenship or have their voting rights trampled over or not have critical funding for health care or for education. But it's an interesting question. I know we're going to talk about it some more, but there's law firms in my profession that embarrassingly and humiliatingly caved.
Yeah.
And didn't show the courage they should show.
Yeah.
And they didn't fight. Like if there was ever a time to fight, it's now.
Yeah.
And that's what attorneys do. They do it in court every day for their clients. They couldn't do it for themselves.
Yeah.
And so it can be painful because he puts the squeeze on folks.
Yeah.
He threatens funding and financial well-being, but it's not about money. It's about values and our future and the principles that this country is based on.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, please.
So in the state of Virginia this year, not next year, this year, there's a very important race for Attorney General. Jay Jones is running. He's a great candidate. He's a great guy. And if you live in Virginia and you want an AG who's going to help fight for the funding that your state deserves, you need to help us out. So just a little plug there.
So
Jay Jones.
let me ask this next question for both of you. So just this morning, we learned that New York Attorney General Letitia James has been subpoenaed in relation to her fraud case against Donald Trump, a fresh moment of retaliation. So in this climate, what is this telling us about the deterioration of the rule of law? What is it telling us about the importance of the work that has to be done? Consider, lay people who we have to explain, how is it that you can be sued for holding someone accountable to the law? What is this telling us about the state of the rule of law here?
So friends, there may have been times in your life years ago when you would say, this is tyrannical, this is authoritarian, it is now. No hyperbole at all. This is the tactic of a tyrannical government that you have read about, that you know about. That country over there where the tyranny is going on, that country is now us. And so that is what we have to squarely look at it. And I'm so glad that we are at Netroots Nation, because you all know this. This is why you're here. You all have an understanding of how government can abuse its authority to punish people that it considers a political enemy, and you have the courage and the bravery to stand up and do something about it. And so that's why we want to be talking to you, because we know that you get it. We know that you understand that, yeah, we're going to sue. You can count on us to do that. And there are some other great civil rights organizations also suing as well. We've done about 44 cases. Total, there's been around maybe over 200. But you all who are putting out messages of fighting back, you all who are organizing, you all who are doing that real on-the-ground work, that is the work that really, really must be done. Those of you who are running for office on the program of truly standing up for the rule of law, that is what must be done. And I believe that we have a mighty enough movement to overcome this moment. But let me tell you, this thing is not going to stay the same. It's going to get better, or it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And if you lay down, it will absolutely get worse. And so the only thing for us to really do is to stand up, fight back, work together. Let's start here.
Yeah, we can't pivot our way out of this crisis. Attorney General Platkin, let me come back to you to build on this conversation, and in particular, let's draw out, for example, the administration's effort to end birthright citizenship, which is an effort to erase one of the core promises of the 14th Amendment. It would leave thousands of newborns effectively stateless, passports, college aid, health coverage, driver's licenses, all these could vanish for these children, and it's already happening in some states waiting to sue. So to make it concrete for people, if New Jersey had stood back rather than racing to the court within 48 hours, what are some of the other concrete harms to families that they would be facing?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was New Jersey along with my colleagues here and 20 or so others at home, and we've had, it is a good question as to why it wasn't 50, because this was not a controversial proposition. You read the plain, I think my 6-year-old could read the 14th Amendment and know what it says. There have been some very conservative judges who wrote papers saying the 14th Amendment said this is what it says, who now are trying to say other things because, again, institutions are bending to the will of somebody who is not respecting the rule of law, which sounds like an abstract term, and it is. And I think even to us lawyers, it's abstract. But it's not abstract to a mother in Camden, in South Jersey, who was planning to deliver a child in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia when Pennsylvania didn't join our suit. So as the federal government at the highest court in this nation said that that child should have the rights and privileges of United States citizenship determined based on whether his mother was in the supermarket in Philadelphia when she went into labor. I mean, think about that. We have not decided citizenship in this country based on which state you live in since a period I don't think anybody wants to go back to in this room, and I would argue, I hope, anywhere in this country. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And I just want to underscore something Keith said, because it's related. All of these attacks on the rule of law are part of an effort to show that he's in charge, that the institutions that are supposed to stand up to somebody who is betraying the constraints placed on a president that the founding fathers of this nation wisely put there because they were concerned about living again under the tyranny of a king. That's why we have them.
Yes.
This president, no regard for that. And so all of these things, rewriting the 14th Amendment, trying to withhold funding in ways that punishes students, weaponizing law enforcement in ways that should terrify us, and make no mistake, are making us less safe. For administration that talks a lot about law and order, I work every day with federal law enforcement officers who are fed up that they can't prosecute gun crimes in our states anymore because they're too busy sending subpoenas about a civil lawsuit under a theory of deprivation of civil rights that no real lawyer thinks is real on a case that the Attorney General of New York won. So this is all part of a broader effort to undermine our institutions on a pathway that maybe this president doesn't study history, but people around him do. They know what this is about. It's about putting us on a path to authoritarianism. It's about attacking the courts. It's about attacking law enforcement, weaponizing law enforcement. It's about attacking the press. It's about attacking institutions of higher education.
Right.
All of the institutions meant to check the authority of an executive and keep you safe. Those are under attack. And birthright citizenship, I think at 8 p.m. on the first day in office that he chose to try to rewrite the Constitution of the United States to say that babies born on U.S. soil are not, in fact, citizens. Again, something we fought the bloodiest war in U.S. history to end the debate over. He tried to restart it.
And of course, many of us don't know that because of the effort to erase that history, right? We all, according to him, we only want the positive history, and that is not part of their view of what the positive history is. Just think about that for
Forgive me,
a moment.
Kim, but I just want to say, some might think, no, he doesn't have a plan. The people around him don't have a plan. He's just an ignorant, and he's trying to grab power. No, they do have a plan. They're particularly J.D. Vance. They have this guy, Curtis Yarvin. You heard of this guy? Who heard of this guy? Study this guy. And he has a very cogent plan that democracy is over. Society should be run by technocrats who use computers to just tell people what to do. They subscribe to this school of thought. They are trying to do exactly what it looks like they're trying to do. So.
And at the same time, when they've been abundantly clear about their disdain for democracy, abundantly clear about how they're going to overtake it, we don't get nearly the kind of coverage about that as we should. We get moral panics about trans kids. We get moral panics about CRT. We get moral panics about women being out of control. But what really is demolishing our democracy is billionaire technocrats who think democracy is dead.
Right.
So we've got this imbalance in our coverage. I think that, and I want to come back to you, A.G. Bonta, because you also mentioned, the law firms. One of the arguments that's given for taking the knee is that, look, the resources, the money, we have no choice but to fight. So that is the argument. But you've done the math, and you've come to a different conclusion about why we need to fight. Yes, the principles, but at the same time, this idea that it's too expensive or we'll lose too much just isn't true. So you all have argued that standing up for Californians makes better economic sense. Can you walk us through that argument?
Absolutely. So we've brought 37 lawsuits in 28 weeks in the state of California, many of them in multi-state with my colleagues up here. We have, from day one, used the law as our North Star, saying if he breaks the law, we'll sue. And we have spent $5 million on our litigation to date, and we have secured, protected, and defended $168 billion of funding that the Trump administration was improperly trying to withhold from us. Money that Congress appropriated to California. California, by the way, sorry to go on a proud California rant, but
that's all right. I'm all here for it.
Fourth largest economy in the world, a donor state to the federal government. We give more in federal taxes than we receive back in federal funding, and they're trying to withhold the funding. We subsidize red states that need support, that are wrestling with economies not as strong as ours. And so we made a calculation that for every dollar we've spent, we've brought back $33,600 to the state that we've protected. And in our lawsuits, we're not just suing, we're winning. In the 20 cases in which, thank you, in the 20 cases in which a court issued an order on a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order, we won 18 of those.
Wow.
And so 90% success rate, $168 billion protected, $1 spent for a $33,600 return. That would make Wall Street investors.
Yes, go ahead.
Point on that. I hope these folks that are saying it's the right business calculation to capitulate and throw the rule of law out the window, try to go do business in China or Russia or places that they can throw you in jail if they don't like you. They can take your property if they don't like you. The state runs everything. Go tell me how great it is to be in an economy over there. And, we'll see how their perspective might change.
Yep. So while we're on that, I want to go back to the law firms to you as well. So how do we explain their capitulation? Is it that they really don't know that there might be winnable strategies and returns for fighting back? Is it that their principles run contrary to what they think the bottom line is and they're just mistaken? Are they just cowards? How do you think about what we've seen from those who actually were committed in the first Trump administration to fight back, and now you can't find the fight in them that they used to have? How do you understand that?
I think it's that multiple choice answer, all of the above. Look, I think I've been incredibly disappointed. I'll just say it, with some of our colleagues in our profession. I've been disappointed with institutions of higher education. I've been disappointed with members of the media. That I've been proud of the ones that have done their job. But I've been disappointed with ones and business decisions that I think are complete capitulations. Stephen Colbert is a proud New Jersey resident, so give them a shout out. Look, if we're banking, this idea the rule of law was so strong and it was the underpinning, these are just norms, okay? There's a constitution, and a constitution is an embodiment of norms that we say we believe in. And what we have seen, frankly, is too many people are putting short-term calculus ahead of long-term thinking about the stability and the rights of people in this country. It's not going to work out for them in the long run if we keep on this course. I am confident that. History has made that quite clear. And for law firms, I don't know why you would hire a law firm to go fight for you when they won't even fight for themselves, but that's right. A question.
That's right.
But here's the reality, and this is where you all come in. These folks think there is greater risk to them personally by not standing up for things they might personally believe in, and I believe actually a lot of them do. If they capitulate, or if they don't capitulate, then if they stand with us. And we've got to, in some way, shape, or form, change that calculus. We talked about Costco. We talked about other institutions that saw, like, our universities, our press, our businesses, they need to see that you believe in things, that we believe in things, and that they're better off standing for the right thing in the long run. Because I believe they are, but we have seen far too many places and institutions that I thought would be stronger with respect to the rule of law and standing up for everybody's rights than we have seen. And it is a very scary place when, frankly, the folks up here in institutions like ours are some of the few that have stayed strong. We need more people, and those people need your support.
If I can add, I just want to say, so Jenner and Block stood up, Perkins Coie stood up. They got orders from court saying this is a First Amendment right for you to represent your clients. And so these other firms who've caved, they don't have a good excuse. There's law that is out there that would allow them to get right and do the right thing. Another point, Target, my home state company, hires a lot of people in Minnesota. Their sales are down 7% because they lined up with Lucifer. The thing is that, you know, they like to come and tell me about how they're doing all these good things. I'm like, okay, fine, but you said you're done with DEI. Oh, but they said we really didn't mean it because we're doing all this and all that. Yeah, but you stood up with this guy and you capitulated. You gotta, if you want me to walk back in your store, because I'm not walking back in your store, you've got to start doing you got to renounce Satan, you know, and that's what you got. I mean, I hate to be so whatever, but that's how it is. And at the same time, Costco was making money. Mm-hmm. So here he is driving up tariffs on them, breaking up their supply chain, telling them who to hire and how to hire, and they're on his side?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want them to be on my side. I want them to be on their own side.
Yeah.
Because they're losing money because they're standing with the wrong people.
That's right.
And so I just think it's important to keep that in mind. And Costco is eating their lunch because they failed the moral test that they had. So
Keith, while you're on that, you have said, you know, we can fight our fight, but our role and the law itself does not operate automatically.
Right.
There must be the engagement of the population, of the populace to protect
100.
Our democracy. So you've all been talking about how we have to change the equation on the ground.
Right.
We've been talking about how it has to be costly to capitulate. We've talked about how appeasement has to be taken off the table. We can't just watch them do it.
Yep.
We have to make it consequential. What are some of the things that you want to leave people with that they can do to be, you know, there is this concept in the civil rights law of private attorneys general.
Right, right.
If we're going to all be private attorneys general to support our democracy, what does that look like? And I want to ask each of you that as our final question.
Well, let me be quick. So here's the reality. We have been suing. I mean, I think that if you add up every lawsuit that all the Dems have filed, I think their number is like 44. And yet the civil rights organizations have, if we add them all up, they're over 200. But yet we need you to keep it hot on the ground out there across America. That means showing up. If there's a court hearing on gender affirming care, you can pack the court. You can hold a press conference outside the court denouncing what the administration is doing. We need the artists to really get organized. Is any artists in the room? Anybody who does art, and that's what you do? We need you guys to organize. We got to create an aesthetic which will inspire the people to rise up in this moment. We need you all to run for office on a platform of opposing Trumpism. We need you all to support candidates who are doing this, and mostly we need you to organize community meetings. I'll wrap up here. This is not the first AG panel we've done, as you know, Kim. We started in Arizona, then we went to Minnesota, then we went to Colorado and Oregon, then we went to New York, and then we went to, we went to California, Seattle, yep.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave anybody out. We'll come to a place near you. Call us, invite us. But we're coming to the people because we know very well that the answer to this problem is not in a courtroom. It is on the streets of this country and in the hearts of the people.
Rob?
Yeah, I'll just say, stay enraged, stay engaged. Don't be hopeless because we're not helpless.
That's right.
We have power. The most potent power that there is people power. And the boss of Trump is not his billionaire buddies or the greedy corporations. It's you and me and us. And there is more chapter to be written in the story of America, and we're going to write it together because this is a country of, for, and by the people. And that means we got to stay engaged. Democracy dies in the dark with apathy and neglect, and it thrives with engagement and activism and participation. So everyone can do something. No one needs to do everything, but everyone needs to do something.
That's right.
And so let me leave you with this. The 3 C's are really important right now. Courts, crowds, courage. Courts, crowds, and courage. We're going to court to hold Trump accountable when he breaks the law. Crowds are important, whether it be the hands-off national mobilization or the No Kings. Hit the streets, raise your voice, speak loud, speak proud, and be courageous, what we were just talking about earlier. Don't capitulate, don't acquiesce, stand up for our rights, stand up for the principles that make our nation what it is, and make sure that we have an enduring democracy. And the way to do that is by participating and by fighting with courage.
That's right.
Matthew?
Just like we should look to history to understand the moment we're in, we should look to history to have hope. Because this is not the first time this country has been in a dark period. There's no question we're in a dark period right now. But this isn't the first time that we've been there. It's not. I think the people who advocated to end abolitionists thought it was easy. You think people who pushed for reforms and Reconstruction, or the 14th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment thought it was easy, or the people who led the women's suffrage movement thought it would be easy, or the civil rights movement, the gay marriage equality movement, on and on. It's a story of America. And we have seen what happens when you stand up. You've heard Rob's numbers, 160 billion. It's 23 billion in New Jersey. I'm sure it's billions in Minnesota.
Yep.
And it's not just because we won in court. It's because they have reacted when you make your voices heard. And I'll give you one very specific example. Just a couple weeks ago, they turned back on the spending on $150 million to New Jersey and billions of dollars of education spending across the country. Not because of a court decision, but because of the pushback that they got from communities across this country that said, no way in hell are you going to freeze education spending a month before back to school night. And guess what? 10 Republican senators sent the White House a letter saying you got to turn that money back on. And they did. They didn't do it, I assure you, because we sued. They might have eventually. They did it because they heard from folks on the ground. And so we got to be clear-eyed about where we're in, but we can't lose hope. We cannot lose hope because what you guys are fighting for absolutely is worth fighting for, and people's lives depend on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, if ever you heard that lawyers can't be inspirational, you haven't talked to these lawyers. So thank you, Matthew, Rob, and Keith, for holding strong. Very oriented. So, and let me just say, the conversation continues next Tuesday with Keith and a whole nother group of attorneys general at Martha's Vineyard. If you want to be there in the island, come join us. And it's also going to be live streamed. So check us out at aapf.org. Thank you, Netroots Nation. Thank you all for your attention. Let's go and fight.
Great job, brother.
That's the end of our programming for tonight. If you're participating in the annual pub quiz, head up to room 394, 395, and 396.